I love Finding Nemo. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It was a nostalgia classic as a kid, and is still a nostalgia classic as a teen. It still remains as one of my top 5 favorite Pixar movies. Every single time I revisit this movie, I remember every scene, every line, every musical beat, the whole thing. It certainly is also one of the most impressive animated films to ever exist. I mean, it came out back in 2003, and it still looks this vibrant and expressive 21 years later. I am still blown away by what Pixar was able to accomplish back then. Just the way it looks, its sense of humor, the characters, the emotion. There is not a single minute where you're not having a great time. How did it turn out this way? You already know, we're here to talk about that. Here's what makes Finding Nemo a visual masterpiece. Before I get into the really good stuff, I might as well get all the smaller elements out of the way first. Let's talk about the music first and foremost, since in my opinion, the music is one of the best elements of the movie. Randy Newman's cousin, Thomas Newman, steps into composing the music, and he delivers what is one of my favorite Pixar scores ever. Much like Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo's score is very unique and uses a lot of piano, flute, violin, trumpet sounds to set the mood for each scene that takes place. You know when you visit an aquarium and you hear that ambient music playing in the background of a tank or tunnel experience? That's what most of Finding Nemo's score feels like. It's smooth and calming, but also dramatic when it needs to be.
Whoo! Chills! I got chills, and I don't even have a nervous system!
Next, let's talk about the movie's animation. And let me say, I still respect Toy Story's animation for being impressive for its time, even if it is dated by today's standards. But unlike Toy Story, Finding Nemo's animation was and still looks amazing. Of all the early Pixar films, this is the one movie where its animation looks its best almost a decade later. In fact, members from the studio actually went on diving trips to research underwater landscapes for this movie. Don't get me wrong, all of the pre-Cars 2 Pixar films have great graphics for their time, but Finding Nemo is the one where its animation looks the most polished and beautiful, particularly when it comes to the increase in scale. Every individual detail and design is there. The underwater world and overall background, it all looks fantastic and breathtaking to see. Basically, everything underwater is the complete opposite of Shark Tale, and Black Panther 2, and The Little Mermaid remake in some areas. But of course, backgrounds are nothing without characters, which is another point I have to give for its animation. This was the first time Pixar had ever animated characters with no limbs, and of course, being a movie that primarily takes place underwater, fish obviously do not have body parts like arms and legs like humans on land. Just like for the backgrounds and set pieces, the animators had to research the way certain sea creatures move and interact with their surroundings. Sea creatures obviously also can't emote the way we normally do, which is what makes it cool to see how everything comes into action. This is where the animators took the time to focus on making the fish look very expressive, and by gosh, they pulled it off. The characters are very expressive, very full of life, very entertaining, and are able to make you feel the emotions they feel at any given point. And the best part is that the expressions don't look horribly dated today. Looking at you again, Shark Tale. And now we come to what is, in my opinion, the best and most fun element of this movie. It's exciting and emotional storytelling. Now, Pixar has always been about setting the stage for their movies, not trying to jump into the main plot too early. But there's something about the first 5 minutes of Finding Nemo that almost perfectly sets the stage for everything, better than most other openings to other of their movies, even the lesser ones. It starts off simple enough with a stunning view of the drop-off of the ocean, cutting to the coral reef where we meet 2 clownfish named Marlin and Coral, and we get perhaps the most realistic conversation of how 2 parents go about raising their children.
We still have to name them.
You want to name all of them right now? All right. We'll name this half Marlin Jr. and then this half Coral Jr. Okay, we're done.
I like Nemo.
Nemo? Well, we'll name one Nemo, but I'd like most of them to be Marlin Jr.
Just think in a couple of days, we're gonna be parents.
Yeah. What if they don't like me?
Marlon,
Oh, really?
there's over 400 eggs. Odds are one of them is bound to like you.
So the movie sets the stage simply enough, introducing us to the setting and characters. Everything seems nice at first. And then, almost 2 minutes in, a barracuda attacks and Marlon loses his wife and almost all his kids. Remember how I said Pixar doesn't always try to get to the point right away? Well, here, this is the movie that gets straight into the main plot the best way. Right from the get-go, Pixar goes straight in with what we've known the studio for doing for the longest time. Hitting you with all the feels. This whole second half of the opening hits harder than you expect it to, simply because it just comes straight out of nowhere. Immediately, the movie shifts gears and showcases the change in tone. The rest of the movie is still very fun, but also now has a very strong emotional center, thanks to the impact of its opening. An emotional center being something, of course, we expect most Pixar movies to have. The rest of the story from here on out is simple, but engaging. It's a huge adventure about Marlon fighting across the ocean with the help of a forgetful, but very positive blue tang named Dory to save the one child he has left after he stumbles into the wrong hands. Literally, and gets kidnapped by scuba divers. And this is where the movie gets really fun, because the adventure itself takes place in so many different locations, from the reef to the shark den to the jellyfish forest to the EAC turtle current, finally to Sydney Harbor. This might just be some of the biggest world building in any Pixar movie, and the ocean is definitely the perfect big place for grand adventures like this that takes place in various new locations. Because of the constant changing from one set piece to another, it makes the film feel like chapters in a book or a season-long television show with a new specific conflict the heroes have to overcome. I guess that is what makes the pacing a little choppy, which is the only real problem I have with the movie overall, but that doesn't stop it from being fun and engaging. It's also during this time that we're introduced to so many fun and memorable characters. Dory, the sharks, the turtles, the Tank Gang, every single one of these groups adds a little bit of something to the table. Of course, they're all supportive toward Marlon and Nemo and care for both of them, but are also extremely funny and iconic. Seriously, I can't be the only one who reenacts the shark pledge.
The meeting has officially come to order. Let us all say the pledge. I am a nice shark, not a mindless eating machine. If I am to change this image, I must first change myself. Fish are friends, not food.
But like I said before, the movie still has an emotional center, specifically in its message. And movies aren't shy with having messages, but there are some out there that include messages that resonate with all audiences. And you guessed it, Finding Nemo is one of them. It takes its message about parenthood and gives it a different meaning to people depending on their age and or role. Parents will go into this movie through the eyes of Marlon, an overprotective father who has to learn his son will eventually grow up, and trust that he will know when he's ready to be by himself in the big wide. Kids will watch this movie through the eyes of Nemo, a young clownfish frustrated by his father's overprotectiveness and wanting to explore what lies beyond the reef. It all boils down to growing up simply being a part of life, and we have to accept that. This message is especially important today, since even though kids are younger than adults, that doesn't mean they're of lesser value or aren't smart enough to decide what the right or wrong decisions in life are. I should know because I myself am a big brother, and I have to trust that my little sister knows what the right decisions are in her life. This is one of many reasons as to why I think Pixar is one of the best animation studios of all time. On top of keeping the fun intact, their focus is always on telling a good story with a message that can resonate with all audiences, no matter what age or gender. Adding to that, the animation still looks gorgeous years later, the characters are likable, it's quotable 24/7, the adventure is engaging, several moments hit hard when necessary. It still remains as one of Pixar's best achievements in their entire library. Now, and this is just an extra, I'm just speaking off the top of my head, and I know this what I'm about to say next might contradict the opening of Finding Nemo, but this is something me and my dad have been thinking about for the longest time. I'm just speaking off the top of my head. What if, in a couple years from now, we got Finding Marlin? Just imagine if Coral was still alive. She and the rest of their children actually survived the Barracuda attack and have been living elsewhere all these years, and Marlin and Coral can reunite with each other. Wouldn't that be something? That's the Pixar sequel that I want. Forget freaking Toy Story 5. Yes, it would destroy the impact of the opening, but still, imagine if we did eventually get that. It would be pretty interesting, huh? Risky, but I think there's a chance. Actually, you know what? As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go pitch that idea to Pixar. I'll be right back.